Another week, another chance for me to be completely useless at predictions. Going 1 for 5 last week compared to Kev's 2, so both of us were fairly dreadful, but I just shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, only one I got right was Brentford, and yeah, that was just not a good week. So moving on to episode 7, where this week we are looking at boxing, MMA, hockey, and GAA. We hope you enjoy. Okay, so we are getting things started with a boxing fight that isn't a boxing fight. Yeah, it's Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather in a exhibition bout. So it's boxing, but not boxing, essentially. Floyd Mayweather, 44 years old, 50-0. We haven't seen him box properly since the McGregor fight back in 2017. He has sort of been active with that fight against Tenshin Nasukawa in 2018, which again was one of these weird exhibition-y money grab boxing fight, but not a fight. Other side, Logan Paul with the exceptional 0-1 record, which is totally deserving of going and fighting a guy that has 50 pro wins. Yeah, his only pro fight was a split decision loss to KSI. Um, Making this even weirder is this sort of no weight class thing. Mayweather is going to be capped at 160 pounds, Logan Paul at 190. So yeah, it's not even like this is trying to be legitimate. It's like, okay, we're sort of going to make up for the skill discrepancy by you being like allowed to weigh 30 pounds more. I mean, it's intriguing if nothing else. Originally slated for February, but got pulled, and now we're having it here in June. Um, the joy of a possible 4 a.m. start does not excite me, but the absolute lunacy of this thing even happening does. You can't not go Mayweather here. He's just the master of defensive boxing, even with the 30-pound weight difference. He's just gonna outclass Logan, and it's just not a challenge. I don't think. Weight discrepancy, skill discrepancy. I don't think it matters. There can't even be a decision in this. Apparently, it's KO or draw. But yeah, I think Floyd will just sort of tire him out, make him chase him, and pick him apart slowly, and it'll probably be like a TKO finish, maybe a throw of the towel. But yeah, but I'm going Floyd here. He doesn't lose, and he isn't losing here.
Up we have Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather in an entertainment fight. Both different styles of boxing, not even their actual abilities, but their weight class is massive difference. Only similarity you can find between them is they're doing this for the money by the looks of it. Now, I've become more leading on Floyd Mayweather. The fact that this fight even exists is it's a major surprise. But despite for the money promotion, it is going to be a very entertainment fight. So obviously I will go more for the Floyd Mayweather knockout.
So the European football season finishing makes me pick some weird stuff for this show, and this is just a weird week by any standards. But yeah, we're going with the one of the undercard fights for the Mayweather Paul fight is Brian Maxwell against Chad Ochocinco, Chad Johnson. It's a bare knuckle boxer against an ex NFL player. Maxwell's 33, has a 2-3 MMA record, and has had 3 bare knuckle fights, and has an impressive 5-1 amateur MMA record. So I mean, while he's not a household name in the sport, he's no well, he's a very good amateur, but he's not totally new to this. Whereas Chad Johnson is 43 years old and has no combat sport experience. So why this is happening is beyond me. But it's happening, so we're covering it. He played 10 seasons in the NFL for the Bengals before being traded to play for the Patriots and the Dolphins, and was in 2011 voted the most influential athlete on social media. But yeah, I have no idea why this is happening. I have very limited knowledge of Brian Maxwell. I caught a few highlight clips of him, and obviously with Ocho Cinco having no combat sports background, there's just nothing to see of him. So, I'm going to go with the guy who's done this before, and I'm going to say Maxwell by stoppage because, I'd rather back a guy I have seen than a guy I know nothing about and who's doing the job for the first time. and is 10 years older.
Up next, we have Brian Maxwell and Chad Johnson in another entertainment fight. We have MMA pro boxer, bare knuckle boxer versus a former NFL and player who's actually new to combat. Looking at Maxwell fighting in his bare knuckles boxing, he can be very very brutal, and unfortunately I couldn't find any highlights for poor Chad Johnson. So of course I'll be more leaning on to the Brian Maxwell knockout. But again, another entertainment fight must be watched.
Sticking with the sort of weird theme of this week, we are hopping over to KSW to look at a pretty interesting main event as Mariusz Pudzianowski takes on Lucas Jurkowski. Probably got those wrong. Hey, I tried. Pudzianowski, a 44-year-old world's strongest man legend, 5-time winner of the tournament and 2-time runner-up. Guy's strength is just pretty much unparalleled. You know, he's an absolute legend over in KSW. That's why, despite this not being a title fight, he is headlining the card. Yeah, 44 years old, 265 pounds of legit power. 14-7 record, and the guy absolutely swings. I mean, looking at highlight reel of his, he is a absolute freak. Very much the guy that sort of drops people early and just hammers shots down. Not technically phenomenal by a global standard, but not a guy you would want to get hit by, and he hits a lot. Jurkowski I'm way less familiar with. Again, he's 40 years old, same height, slightly more experienced, 17-11 record, hasn't fought since 2019, but has bigger names on his record than Pudzianowski, including a win over Sokoju. Again, a KSW legend. He's the longest tenured fighter on their roster, having won KSW 1. Comes from a Taekwondo background, so he's going to have a lot more of a dynamic range of striking than Pudzianowski. Big arsenal of kicks. Seen a few clips of him here and there, nothing, to really sway me his way. I'm going to lean Pudzianowski here because, sort of the Ngannou rule of, it's not like I don't think Jurkowski can win. It's more like I think over a lengthy fight, Pudzianowski's going to hit him eventually, and when you have that much power, I'm leaning with that.
Up next, we have Maurice versus Lucas, two fighters with different weight class between them, but surprisingly same fighting abilities. They're very powerful with their kicks, and you don't want to be in the ground when they come at you. But Maurice has been doing very well with 2 wins, and most of his fights, surprisingly, are knockouts, which I think will be going to happen to this fight. Despite Lucas' more fighting experience, it's a major difference to fight a guy who's the strongest man in the world. So that's what's going to happen. But again, the fact that there's been no drug testing involved is going to be very entertaining to see.
Right, so moving away from the world of combat sports, we are looking next at the Euro Hockey Championship. We have here the opening game of the women's bracket of the tournament. Pool A, which has the game we're covering here, is Netherlands versus Ireland. The Netherlands are hosting the tournament, and their group is Ireland, Scotland, and Spain. The tournament's ran since 1984, and the Dutch are pretty much dominant over it, having won the tournament a record 10 times and are currently ranked number 1 in the world. The winner of this will automatically qualify for the World Cup, although both teams were more than likely going to make this anyway. This just being an opening group game, it has no bearing on that, but it's just an interesting point that both of these teams would probably get there anyway. In 2019, Ireland equalled their best ever finish in the tournament of 5th, so they are way less likely to win this than the Dutch, who are most reigning champions and historically very, very dominant. These two actually played each other in the 2018 World Cup final, with the Netherlands trouncing Ireland 6-0. But there's a really good feeling around this Ireland camp, and a lot of people think they can do quite well in this tournament. I mean, having reached a World Cup final, you've got to rate them to some degree, but maybe not on this occasion. Um, Tough opening draw coming up against a team as acclaimed as the Dutch here. I don't see it going Ireland's way. I think maybe a 3-1 win for Holland, but it's the sort of thing if they can, do themselves justice in this and really hold their own and then pick up wins over Scotland and Spain, it could be a good tournament for Ireland, but I think this one's too much to ask, so.
In the Euro Hockey Championship, we have Netherlands and Ireland, with the Netherlands being the toughest opponent in Pool A, with current champions and currently number one. Ireland last played Netherlands back in 2018 in the World Cup final with a tragic loss of 6-0. But over the years, Ireland has been improving year in year out with the hockey, and hopefully this is their chance to go back and get revenge on the Netherlands. So a little bit biased towards Ireland, but I hope it'll be a 2-0 win. But again, the whole country will be backing up on them.
So Ken's done it again to me this week. He's making me cover the GAA, so yeah, tolerate this if you will before Kev actually gives you some insight of use. We're going with Cork versus Limerick. Limerick lost their last fixture against Waterford, and things are not really going their way. They've only got 1 point, which was from a draw with Tipperary. They've got injury issues. Cork, very much the favourites in this, but actually, interestingly, have the youngest team in the tournament with a number of under-21s players. And I'll leave you with that because that's what Kev has sent me, along with some other stuff that I don't really understand. So basically, Cork are the form team. I'm picking them.
In the Alliance Hurling League, we have Cork versus Limerick, with Limerick having very, very poor form this season so far with 2 losses, making them only have 1 point in the league so far, which was against Tipperary. Adding on to that, they have lots of injuries and in full back line and in the forward line, so it's going to be a real struggle for them. But badly need a win to keep up their chance of actually win the league. Cork, however, are doing very, very brilliantly. First place so far. We see Patrick Horgan doing very, very well despite his age compared to the rest of the young team. I'd be more leaning on Cork with a win, despite Limerick barely need a win to keep up their campaign going. The reason is because their forward line has been absolutely immense throughout the campaign, and after that demolition of a win against Westmeath in their last fixture, so that's when maybe I would say 5-point win. Usually these kind of games are very close, but I'm more leaning of Cork to win.
So that wraps up Ready for the Weekend episode 7. After last week, Kev once again extended his lead. He's now 3 points clear as far as I know. I'll be tallying stuff up and putting it over here somewhere. So, yeah. All our predictions will be over there as well. Let me know your predictions in the comments below. As like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. It helps. Why not? We're not that useless. Well, I am. Kev's slightly better right now. But yeah, we'll be back next week with a lot more sporting action. I'm presuming we're probably going to cover the Adesanya fight, as well as maybe some Euro stuff, and hopefully I'll finally get him to cover the cricket and maybe some MLS stuff again. European football's done, so, pot luck whatever's on over the week. Yeah, so, until then, see you next time.